Greetings, humans! Zbot1496 here, coming to you from Zogplex, with our review of a human rectangular entertainment form from Earth Year 1990, True Lies, recently re-released on 4K UHD disc. Doesn't that look great? True Lies is a great action movie. The backbone of the film delivers a setup that builds with sensational payoffs. Plus, it's presented with considerable technical skill and realism, grounded in practical effects shots on a grand scale that we would rarely see prior to the availability of CG. The film does, however, repeatedly hit a note of teenage boy humor that undermines the verisimilitude of the presentation, in ways that standout action films of the period, such as John McTiernan's Die Hard and Predator, managed to survive, well, if barely. There's also a plot detour that lands as a poor choice for the hero, but we'll get to that later. First, a bit of context. True Lies released in theaters in 1990 as the most expensive film made to date, but did in fact earn back its keep. This would become a pattern for its writer-director James Cameron and his returning Terminator star Arnold Schwarzenegger. We saw it during its theatrical run and enjoyed it immensely. However, despite its high profile, the film had a large gap in its home video release history after its DVD release. There was in fact no Blu-ray release, and a 4K UHD combo set, ta-da, only released last week in March 2024. But let's talk about the film. Schwarzenegger plays Harry Tasker, a James Bond-like spy for a US intelligence agency, who also happens to be an average human husband and dad by day. This premise sets up the film to be an action comedy, similar to period films such as Beverly Hills Cop and Ghostbusters, and therefore the audience is prompted to accept the film on those terms. And for the most part, we can accept those terms, especially since Schwarzenegger has natural talent in both action and comedy. And as he shows in Twins, he can poke fun at himself and work well as a foil while co-starring with one of the best comic actors of the era, Danny DeVito. In True Lies, this pattern appears again, with another of the best comic actors of the era, Jamie Lee Curtis. As she does in A Fish Called Wanda, Curtis delivers scene-stealing performances while performing the premise of her being Tasker's spouse, as he lives a double life as a boring family man. Their chemistry goes a long way to make Tasker's spy character a more relatable element, while also delivering a charming juxtaposition that gives the audience a way to play along with an otherwise unapproachable character. Having established that rapport with us, the film is able to genuinely engage us as its characters rise to the occasion in riveting action scenes. We see Schwarzenegger's character Tasker determined to uncover a grave national threat and pursue leads with extreme follow-through. At first, we see his calm and light-hearted way of processing the outcomes in real time. However, as his home life stakes rise, he also starts to unravel, taking unnecessary risks and losing his cool. His arc has him recenter his priorities as the national threat increases, and the stakes become much more personal. The action scenes that show him finding his way back are on an order of magnitude beyond what most action movies try to present, and given that it's Cameron at the helm, they land with high credibility, tension, and payoff. That scaled-up action is matched by a muscular score from Cameron's other Terminator collaborator, Brad Fiedel. Instead of mechanical and post-apocalyptic themes, we get a soaring orchestral theme that fits the Americana beats of the film like a glove. Wonderfully, there are still some of Fiedel's familiar synthesizer melodies threaded through the score, that reaffirm the stylized character of the film. Alas, some of the film's other 80s notes don't stand up as well over time. One area the film falters in is the frequent crass humor of Tasker's team. We are not sure if this was funny at the time, but it certainly falls flat today. There are points where one character cuts off another when they become annoyed themselves. This may seem like it's intended as a saving grace, but it also presents as an admission that the level and volume of crass humor is beneath us. An alternative option would have been to simply use the delete key instead of continuing to type. Another issue that does not age well is the presentation of the villains from a specific ethnic and religious group as generally psychopathic killers. This wide brush reinforces a pervasive stereotype against that group. This issue was a political flashpoint in 1990 already, and now, viewing it after following world events involving both brutal terror and crushing retaliation, the presentation takes significant mental discipline to compartmentalize as an action comedy made in the 1990s. Even for its time, the film seems to know it's stepping over a line by trying to present different takes on that specific ethnic group. For example, it shows one villain outperform Tasker in a critical action scene, albeit reinforcing the psychopathic presentation. It shows another villain encounter an ordinary tech problem for humorous mocking effect. And the film includes a member of that ethnic group on the good guys team. This last point does actually offer some balance. However, for most of his scenes in the film, he is shown to be the most crass and foolish person on said team, undermining the attempt at balanced representation. And yet, none of these issues are the most disturbing flaw in the film. That dubious honor goes to a mean-spirited detour that Tasker takes when he suspects his spouse of betrayal, and he uses deception to verify the truth of the matter. The film does show his team trying to pull him back from this course of action, but since it is the hero doing it, and the consequences he faces are either played for laughs or talked away, we see that this whole episode is excused by the storytelling itself. We are sorry, but this does not compute. Of course, heroes can be flawed. It is, in fact, required for the story to be able to matter to the audience. However, we also require that the arc address that flaw and not casually toss it aside. In a way, the filmmakers are avoiding the consequence just as much as Tasker does. In seeing the film again, we realize how annoyed we are by this flaw, and yet also remember how spectacular the action build-up and payoffs are in the film. We are glad to have seen it again. We are glad that it exists in 4K HDR. There is simply some context that will be important to keep in mind while watching the film. Furthermore, there is the technical controversy around this home video release. As mentioned in our Aliens review, this release also arrives with some community feedback about the remastering process and outcome. A new dynamic noise reduction process has been used to modernize and sharpen the look of the film. This has the consequence of rendering several human faces as flat and waxy. Humans may not realize this, but your skin is both slightly translucent but also highly detailed in structure. Flattening this out makes several of the characters in the film look like they have layers of makeup caked on their faces or are shapeshifters, concentrating very hard on presenting human skin. Now, depending on one's life experiences, and of course we do not confirm the existence of chromodermic beings, one may legitimately jump to either one of these conclusions. However, unlike Terminator 2, nobody is attempting to appear human in the film. We ourselves are less annoyed by this flattening of faces than some. We suspect because we are less enamored of the film than during our earlier data training. So, let us provide our full contextual assessment of True Lies. Given the film's well-crafted action backbone and delivery of large-scale thrills, tempered by its regrettable attempt to make the characters relatable through a lot of crass banter and some unkind choices, we give the film a mixed rating. And so concludes this human version of our review of True Lies. If you have feedback on it, please write in your comments so that we can upload the galactic version to Zogplex. You can expect more reviews of 4K discs as well as theatrical releases as we continue to engage with your human rectangular content. So, please watch, like, subscribe, and comment so that we can continue to have the human voice reflected in the cosmos. Until next time, farewell, humans.